Lisa Tomei Zonneveld with Prolific Posts. Wonderful today to have Robyn Stecher with us. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Are going to talk about Robyn's latest book, The Spin Cycle. And I got to tell you, Robyn, I really am enjoying reading this book. It really touches on some topics that are near and dear to my heart. And but before we get started on that, Robyn, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am Boston born. I came to New York City at 18 to attend university at NYU. I wanted to be a full-time writer. 1980, that wasn't exactly easy. We didn't have as many outlets as we do today. Loved the entertainment industry, also studied acting. Became an executive VP at a talent agency eventually and made my 40-year career in the entertainment industry, which in many respects is relevant to the writing of this book, because what I discovered is that there was not much representation of people with disabilities across the spectrum in all media. And so what was concerning to me about that as I was ending my career was that there was nothing I could do to move the needle. In every meeting, everywhere we spoke, whether it was an association, whether it was within the agency, whether it was in groups, conversations turning toward this subject matter were either shied away from, or we can't do it, it's too difficult, and accommodations, and there was just a litany of reasons why. And when I finally decided to resign from the position, not for that reason, but because we had come through the pandemic, I had been doing it 40 years, it was enough. I wanted to continue to write, turn my focus to creative endeavors. And what I found within myself was that the words kept coming back at me. We need content. We need content. There's no content. And I thought, okay, the one little thing I can do is I can write. And if I can write content. And if I can write content, I can write a novel, and then maybe the novel becomes a film. So this was my dream for this work, and continues to be my dream in terms of it now being a published book. But then, can we make a film out of this? Think about the film, The Leftovers. The Holdovers, with Paul Giamatti, about a young guy who gets stuck back at a private school, and this beautiful friendship that evolves between this older man and this younger man. And tremendous inspiration was drawn from the way that film was made. And Paul Giamatti has his own issues, which we don't see necessarily in the outward optics of who he is, but he very much struggles with some things. And so this kind of started percolating for me. A lot of other things were percolating for me, and the book started to take shape. And so, to bring you current, we've published the book, and now perhaps someday we'll have a film. But that's kind of the genesis of how the book was uh, the book was born, through a true desire that I had and a need that I saw. And I thought, I'm just one person, but what can I do? And I can write. So there it was.
Well, I think it's a very important topic to be discussed, and I think nowadays the opportunities are much more open for this particular subject matter.
Yeah.
And best wishes to you for going to a movie. Definitely see that happening.
Yeah.
So in that whole process of thinking about a movie, um, are you getting some positive bites that direction?
We're so at the beginning of this journey because the book has to really find its way in life first. But way prior to my finishing the book, I was connecting with people because I came out of the entertainment industry. I had connections in Hollywood and LA and good friends. And then I was meeting people through my quest. I went on a journey to find people to talk to about this very subject and what are the difficulties, and casting directors that were now turning their attention away from typical casting to casting authentically and casting people with disabilities. And so I started speaking with folks who were in casting, folks who were working in Hollywood, folks who were in a position to develop projects, also filmmakers who who were disabled themselves, filmmakers who identify as disabled people and who really wanted to see more of this. So the more I spoke with people, the more wind I had in my sails. So where we are right now is, yes, of course, people who look at this book, and I wrote it very visually. I wrote it dialogue heavy and character driven and very visual. So obviously it sets up for a good screenplay. I would not write the screenplay. I would bring on um, a really veteran screenwriter if I could, because by attaching people, celebrities that could play the celebrity roles, looking at authentic casting, looking at how we're going to get the screenplay written, those are the pieces that now have to fall into place once the book is out there in the world and we can start working on that part of it. Yeah.
Well, I wish you the best with that because I think this is an important the story to put out there, and people are so visual these days.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important. I know that as I was reading it, I'm like, I've known people like in that these characters were portrayed. I've known people. I came from a very diverse background and lived in a small community for almost 20 years. And in small communities, you pick up on the characters. There are people in the community that I could see that could be written as a character in this story. We had one particular fellow who worked at a local bar who he kept it clean and was there a kind of a main main character in the bar, so to speak. And everybody knew him. Everybody got to know him. He liked to joke around with people. He could also get very serious if his, he didn't like people to make fun of him. And I was very stern about that, very self-protective, and loved to engage with people. And kind of reminded me, about in the story that you wrote and differences. Bo was at the laundry. Sibby was at the bar. That was the guy's name, Sibby. And Sibby's no longer here. He's been many years ago gone. But I used to love to talk to Sibby and more engaged with him, when I would go down. Because the tavern was a place where everybody went. They had fried chicken night on Wednesday, had fish night on Friday. It was the community tavern. And in fact, I'm working on a little story right now, and there's a community type tavern where everybody went. If you wanted to know anything, you went to the local tavern.
Right.
And yeah, so the character that I knew there, so to speak, real person I knew there, was like Bo, very similar. So I've really enjoyed reading this book to pick up that character. I'm like reading Bo, I'm like, oh, that's Sibby. And it's very similar, very similar. Um, Now I understand, going back a little bit, your background has been in writing memoir. So this is a little shift a little bit, but not quite, right?
It's huge. Well, it was a climb up Mount Everest, I'll be very honest with you. And when I started putting together the jumping off point for this story, which was going to be this relationship between this unusual character, Bo Cabrini, who owned a laundromat, and a young man named Benji Goldstein, 26-year-old, identifies as disabled. I intentionally left out labels because I didn't want the Googlers to go out there and start trying to figure out who is this and what is this. And so most of the characters, except for one, do not identify what their specific disability is, if you will. But what I wanted to do with this was to really try to capture the idea that these are characters. They are informed by an amalgam of people that I've met, but I've put them together into single individuals so that we could capture some of what I have experienced in real life and kind of go from there and then say, well, what could I do with this? Where could I go? I'm a creative person. Writing memoir, with all due respect, now some people will say the opposite, but it is for me so easy to write memoir. I've been writing since I was 2 and dictating to my mom my own stories. I didn't want to read other people's stories. I wanted to dictate my stories. Those were fictional. But as I got older, if you will, I was in high school and I was writing. I was always writing. Writing was my first language. I knew I had something because I kept hearing back from other people that I was a good writer. And my teachers would say, keep writing, whatever you do, keep writing. So I knew the writing was there. I developed a voice, and it got to a point where I believed I had something going on in my life that was enough, there was enough interest there to try to write about it from a memoir perspective. So I wrote that first book based on the first 3 years of my son's, actually not 3 years. There was an article I wrote. Let's backtrack for a second. First piece that I published was an article for Family Circle magazine. And it was, my son was about 3 years old. He was born with a rare syndrome. We did not know what it was. It was not identified until much later in his life, but there was something that made him, quote, different. Now, whatever that thing was, I embraced that immediately, and this was our life, and we were a team, and we went on about our business. It landed on me far later that there was anything about it that was particularly interesting. And then when he was about 3, it dawned on me that I had gone through already some kind of journey with him, and that I was not the typical mom who had a career and that was going to be able to go on and just live my life the way everybody else did with a, quote, typical kid and blah, blah, blah. So this article, which was called There's Something About Daniel, appeared in Family Circle. Now, what's interesting about this is that I submitted this article to a number of disabilities magazines, and they all rejected it. And the one that took it was Family Circle. The number one circulated mainstream magazine in the world takes this story, and no other magazine had published anything like this at this particular time, in 1996. So that was special, and it was a big deal. And at that time, they sent a big crew, and we did pictures and this. And then after that whole experience, I kind of tabled it. I said, all right, well, we did that. And I got to speak about what it was like to be a young mother with a child who had disabilities, but I didn't know what they were. I didn't know what they were, what umbrella they were going to come under. They just were there. And the journey that we were taking. Later, in order to really write a fully fleshed memoir, you have to have a jumping off point and something to say. What do you really want to talk about? And what do you want to reflect upon? And what do you want people to walk away feeling or knowing having read this book? So until Daniel was much older, people kept saying to me, write about your experience. And I said, but there's nothing to jump off from. I don't know where to enter that story and what to reflect upon until he's lived a bit more and I've lived a bit more with him. And then I'll know. And so the next book, which was published in 2010, by now, Daniel was a young adult, and I had enough. He had been through his teenage years. I had grown up a bit myself. I had been through my own experiences. There was enough in the story to try to want to talk about it. That book, I took the title of the article and called it There's Something About Daniel, and that was that. We put it away. It went out there in the world. It was great. And then again, an agent read that book and said to me, we don't know anything about you, this woman behind this story. We know a lot about your relationship with your son and everything you journeyed, but you've hardly delved into yourself. I think the story is you. I think the story is about you and about what brought you to this and what the mechanisms were. Where did your strength come from? Where did you derive your ability to navigate as well as you did? Because in his opinion, I had navigated well. I've done a lot of good things for my son. So I said, all right, I'll think about it. And a couple of years before the pandemic, I started writing the book. That was the second memoir, which is called It's Just Who We Are. And I really went into my whole family. I went into my relationships. I went into my 2 marriages. I went into my life, really the book is rooted in me and my life in New York. And then Daniel, of course, comes into it, but he isn't necessarily the most featured experience in the book. My whole life is the featured experience in the book. So writing memoir for me is quite natural to want to sit down and write about my life. Share. I love storytelling. I'm a big advocate for our telling our stories, our whole stories. That book opens with an introduction wherein I speak about the sharing of our stories, and without that, we are just islands adrift. So segue now into writing a novel, which is really what you asked me about. This was a whole other universe, and I am not honestly, I don't have an MFA. I haven't studied novel writing, and so, or fiction writing, or creative fiction, as some people like to call it. So this really was a whole new world. But I had a great editor from the second book, and I went to Jennifer Collins and I said, Jennifer, I want to write this novel, and I'm going to send you the first 30 pages of it. And if it's crap, tell me to stop now. But if there's anything there, I'll keep going. And she read it and she said, "Are you kidding me? I mean, you've got a great voice. You can do this. You don't have to have gone to school to do this. You don't need courses. I'll do this with you. We'll. So the book was entirely written by me. She was not my ghostwriter or nothing like that, but she was an incredible coach and story editor in many respects. So that's the way I would describe her role in this. And what she did was she really helped me understand how to format a novel, how to structure a novel, how to pace the novel, how to make it so that if it's taking place over 1 year of time, you're not stuck in September and you never get to January, and how to advance the characters and how to evolve them, and how to carefully and thoughtfully bridge information, bridge chapters, bridge time, um, bring these relationships together and make them make sense. Because in the real world, our relationships, whether they're strange or wonderful or love or hate or whatever they are, they make sense to us. So all of these
Right.
relationships. And then the biggest thing that I learned really out of all of this was that my characters, once I started writing, were coming to me. I channeled them. I would sit down to write and I'd call them in and their voices came in to me. And the voice is, of course, incredibly important in novel writing. In
Yes.
novel writing, the voice is important because it's going to drive the reader forward or make the reader quit the book. In novel writing, you've got a multitude of characters that are not just your narrative voice, and you have to just bring those characters to life through the voice you give them. And so I learned a great deal about that. What was Benji's voice going to be? What was Bo's voice? What was Brittany and Tammy and Curtis and all of these people who were in there, Lucy, Petey, the other bad guys? What do they sound like? And to get to that material, that took a lot of sitting for me. Really sitting.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope I answered the question.
You did, and I think that you're right on target about voice, and that is one of the hardest things, but yet one of the most important things that you can do with a story. I immediately engaged with, and I had picked up on the voice of the character. I mean, my idea of the voice and yours might have been different, but I got it. I got the voice and was able to just it, pick up the book and immediately engage with this and beautifully done. Myself having, a child who is, we're not sure the category. I don't like categories. I don't like titles. People ask for diagnoses, like, it's none of your business. How about that for a diagnosis? It's, what it is. Um, I observe and absorb the different personalities of the people that my daughter work with. She works in a company called 321 Coffee, and 321 is, what has to do with the chromosome.
Right.
So all of the people that work there that are not managers are in some way diagnosed with something or have a certain quirky stuff going on, and we love it. That's what part of what makes it so beautiful. And when you go into the environment, you pick up on all the different voices, all the different personalities, and it's a beautiful thing to me. And to be able to put this into this book, to be able to put those voices into this book, what a gift you're giving people. What a gift you're giving the characters in the story who people are going to relate to the characters that they know in real life.
Yeah.
And are we all kind of a character or some kind of a story? And it's called life, you know. People talk about revisiting their own lives and making their own kinds of changes. Are we building a different world? We're building a different how does all that come together? And I think it's just fascinating. So life itself, a fascinating scenario. So beautifully done in your book, The Spin Cycle. I love this cover. I think it just right there you go. There's your cover. That's everything. So, I mean, it's beautifully done. Who designed this?
Well, the cover was a collaboration. I was very blessed that my publisher was willing to include my input in the way the cover was designed. It was really important to me up front to capture the concept that the book takes place in a laundromat. The laundromat is a certain kind of laundromat, the way Benji describes it. It's kind of old, it's kind of run down, it's this, it's that, it's a low-lying building. And so, and because again, the book is so visual, and the way he describes life in general, he's very visual. Many of his descriptors come from his ability to visualize and interpret what he's seeing, and he does a very good job of bringing us into his world from everything from the very beginning. So cover the cover artist, I don't personally know, I haven't met, I don't know, but the publisher was really sensitive to the notes I was giving him and to what I wanted, and I was thrilled when I saw the final. It took, it always takes a few rounds to get it,
Oh,
to
yeah.
capture it. But by the time, and okay, it was really important also that character that's on the front of that book, we're going to think that there's no way to get around it. You're going to look at the cover and you're going to think that's the laundromat, and that's probably what Benji looks like. That's just a human assumption. So it was important to me that whether Benji looks like that or not really wasn't as important as we're not going to make him this buff guy that's kind of so easily hauling this launder bag down the street, because he describes himself in the beginning of the book how incredibly difficult it was, and he had forgotten about doing his laundry for a few weeks because he procrastinated, and now he's got to haul these bags down the street. That visual was so imprinted on me, and the feeling of him hauling those bags needed to come across. Something about that thing had to come across, and it was
Hmm.
a differentiator. And I think the differentiator was, you know, we understand that people will make certain assumptions for themselves. But for me, it was, how are we going to capture something that sounds kind of simple, but it's really kind of complex if you think about it?
Yeah.
Putting it all together and then enabling that artist to come up with something. And
Yeah.
again, a few rounds, like what does that character really need to look like? Just a hint of something there, a hint of this about the laundromat, a hint of this about this character. And that big old laundry bag, which was important to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you could feel like when you're reading that, you're dragging that bag down the
Okay.
street,
Yeah.
thinking, oh my goodness, it's gonna be a mess when he gets it there. But that's a really beautiful cover. You're really fortunate to have someone that can put that together. As a publisher, I know about rounds with covers, and I've had spent hours on end working on, single covers, and oof, yeah. So I can relate to that.
All right. And then, one of the things we had a challenge with, and I won't, um, I'll make this quick, but um, the back cover, of course, has quotes, and then you have to accommodate for the quotes that you gather. I was very blessed. Kirkus was very good to me. So, of course, we want to highlight certain things. And what Kirkus did in their initial review was they cited the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. So while you have an advanced reader copy, we've changed that quote to include it because that is one of the highest compliments one could be paid in terms of being a writer, being um, compared in some ways to, really a classic about a young man who identifies as an autistic young man. I mean, now we use spectrum disorder, but then, autism was the word. And those things come into cover planning, as you well know. So you always want to balance also not just what's going on the front cover, which is obviously more important in some respects, but then there's the back cover. Somebody's going to pick it up and look. They're going to respond somehow to what you put on your back cover. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
And you have to be able to even just read a back cover. One of the things that I have tried to really focus on, and I have, and someone that helps me with this that is colorblind. And so they have to approve my covers. They have to look at them and tell me, can they read the cover? The basic point to be, are they going to be able to read and understand what that cover says? And I have at times when I've had to point that out to others, to be kind of helpful, take a look at this. Are you going to be able to see and read these colors that you have? And so, it's very important to be sensitive to those things. So what's next for you? I know you're thinking about, getting this out there, of course,
Of course, we're
and
getting it out there. And my real dream for this, as I said, is that eventually we'll find someone to option it, we'll make the film, I mean, that's kind of the far reach on this one. There is another book I've been thinking about writing. Now that I got this one under when I finished this book, I said, I don't know if I could ever do another novel. This was really hard. But then there's another story I want to tell. And it too is inspired by um, a very extreme situation. I tend to lean into these kind of extreme situations and then want to bring them back into something that's real life, that's livable, and kind of integrate a really provocative concept into something that people can also identify with, because many people go through these experiences in life. And if you're a great storyteller, what you're going to do is tell your story the way you want to do it, but engage that reader, engage that audience into something that is landing on them. And this next story that I want to tell, I don't get too much into what it's about, but it will be a different way of telling a story because I want to tell it from three perspectives. I want the story to be about an incident that three people have extremely different experiences around. And it is about a very timely subject that's provocative. And I'm excited about getting started on it. So I haven't been doing much writing while I've been kind of prepping to get this one out there, but I've started this book. And it's in its infancy. I've already written some of it, and I really want to keep this one in the forefront and keep going. Now, this also I want to just mention the spin cycle sets up for obviously it sets up for a sequel because I end it, no giveaways, no spoilers, but I end it with the possibility that life is going to go on for some of the characters. And therefore, there's a good sequel that we could make out of it. Now, that all depends on me, my energy level, the film, if it ever gets made, is it, there's a lot of stuff that has to be considered when we're talking about a sequel to this. But for now, this will go out there. We launch it, we give it its proper life, hopefully, and it finds its way in the world. We get somebody interested in making this film. We maybe see that happen, and then I get to work on my other book as well. So that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
it's even a series of some kind. Wouldn't that be something? People are really into the series these
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
including me. I
Yeah.
tend to binge watch them. So
And Benji can grow up. And he's 26, 27 years, he's 26 years old when this book is taking place. I think he turns 27. So, he's got a long life in front of him. Who knows what the possibilities are for Benji?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. About who would play the character.
Oh, it's interesting. People ask me this all the time when if you're talking about casting, and I have some ideas. I think the couple of the lead characters, like Bo, the laundromat owner, the mom, Maybe PD, who is this kind of seedy guy that works for Bo. They could probably be celebrities. Lucy could even be a celebrity of sorts. They're not huge roles. Bo's role is very big, obviously, and anchors it. And I think we could do authentic casting on the side of people with disabilities. I wouldn't have it any other way. Um,
Mhm.
I know certainly there are plenty of actors out there that could play Benji. Certainly Brittany. These are not hard, terribly hard to cast actors. The one that's interesting is Tammy. Tammy has a facial difference. Um, I would be very careful with casting her. I don't want to use prosthetic makeup. I'm very clear about some things. So, oftentimes the author, once the rights are bought, you don't have a lot of say in it. But I would be very careful about how this material was handled. Um, because this is an issue out there about authentic casting. And also, one of the things I learned when I was talking with people in Hollywood, I don't mean to hijack conversation, but I think this is important, is that um, when Bryan Cranston played a quadriplegic man, and it's understandable in that film that he did. Why? Why did they need him? Well, yeah, that's going to sell tickets, and watching him do that role, and it's an incredible acting opportunity. Um, Again, same thing with My Left Foot. These are extraordinary actors doing extraordinary characters and extraordinary roles. Great. I get it. But they have clout, they have say, they have agency to be able to say, I will do this if you include certain other characters with disabilities and cast them authentically. I agree if behind the scenes we have certain things going on our set where we know that 50% of the people you've hired, whether we see them or not. And then they have an incredible platform for moving the needle. So there's lots of ways to move the needle, and when we talk about authentic casting, I am one of the most aware, having been an agent in the entertainment industry, that sometimes you can't, or it's difficult to find that character, and I get it, or it won't sell tickets, I get it, but then let's find a way to be inclusive, and you have the power. Celebrities have the power to change things. So that's okay. So, but in this book, we could very easily cast it. I mean, there's no question in my mind that this could be authentically cast, and we wouldn't run into too many difficulties with that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Um, I was at the 321 conference this year, and they had Sophia Sanchez, who has Down syndrome and was in Hunger Games,
Mhm.
and is going to continue on in, her acting career. There are numerous, shows and that have cast people, authentically that have these different kinds of situations going on. And I absolutely believe that we can provide opportunities. In fact, there's someone where my daughter works who was in a movie. I don't remember what movie, or I can't exactly remember the staff member's name, but because I don't know them personally, but it's just there are people out there who are ready and
Yeah,
would enjoy the opportunity to be able to act in these
absolutely.
movies. So we just have to keep pushing and advocating. And what you're doing with this book, what you're doing with your life is exactly doing that. Robyn, it's been great talking with you today. I so appreciate your coming on to our podcast.
Mhm.
Um, And I wish you all the success with your book. I'll certainly be talking it up,
Thank you.
and much success to you.
Thank you, Lisa, and the same back to you. Thank you, and have a blessed day.
You
Bye bye.
as well. Thank you.